My spouse and I have been married for 15 years and both have demanding careers. We love each other, but feel more like roommates than lovers. Recently, my spouse confessed they have a secret fantasy. Ooh, this might get juicy. A secret fantasy of doing romantic role play where they pretend to be different people meeting for the first time. But I feel a bit uncomfortable acting out those scenarios. How can we explore this in a way that satisfies both of us and reignites our passion? What a great question. Marriage, like everything else in life, marriage has different seasons to it. One of my favorite passages in the Bible is out of Ecclesiastes. It says, "To everything there is a season and an activity under heaven." And you know what? In your career, in your marriage, and your dating, and getting healthy, and a bunch of stuff, there are seasons to that path, and those seasons have different activities. It's pretty normal. People fall in love. You're on a drug trip. I mean, a literal drug trip. You've got initial kind of bonding chemicals that are and trust chemicals that are being, shot through your brain, oxytocin and stuff like that. And it's a pretty good high, actually. I remember Scott Peck said in The Road Less Traveled that it's kind of a trick that's wired into people to get them, for lack of better words, denying reality to sign up for this deal. But eventually, there's different phrases. The honeymoon wears off, or the drug trip wears off, the ether wears off. And then you have to be carried into other seasons, not by chemicals, but really by, let's call it, practices, activities, things you have to do, skills, relationship abilities. So when I listen to this, the first thing I hear is, there's no cookie cutter answer to this, because I would want you to ask some questions. So as you are approaching this, I want you to ask some questions. And the first one would be, how did we get here? Okay. How did we get into the non-romantic season? And I don't even think that should be a season. That's sort of like this, whatever season you're in, this weather front has moved in. But it is different than in the beginning. And how did you get, now you've kind of blamed it on your careers. All right. So let's step back. And the first question I want you to ask is, what are the psychological factors at play in making your career more of a priority than your marriage? Now, I know a lot of people can instantly say, well, it's not psychological factors. We got to pay the bills, and, we got school loans, and we've got this and that. I understand that. But there are also magic things that happen when something that's important to you gets prioritized. Now, if you were in the same careers and you were first dating and falling in love, I would bet that there would be ways that you would find of being together and doing certain activities that promote what you're looking for that you're no longer doing, because you sort of check that off your list. And now somehow the career has become paramount. Is that some sort of drive for performance where you got to feel good about yourself for doing better than everybody else? Could it be driven out of, I feel like we got to make more so we can have the next shiny object? Are there lack of boundaries somewhere on impulse control and spending? So if you're saying this is your career, are there lack of boundaries with your boss? A lot of times people have more time from their job and everything than they're actually taking, but they're kind of codependent, or coworkers are doing other things. So I want you to before you say that my career is doing this to me, I want you to think about, why is my career able to do this to me? And list in there, what do you actually have control of? in the time and energy you're putting into your career that's getting in the way. So let's pretend for a moment all of that's fixed. Then I want you to ask this question, which kind of the role play might get to. I think that's kind of an interesting idea. But if you were pretending to be other people, all right, basically what you're saying there, you don't even have to pretend to be other people. What you're talking about is you are pretending that you don't know each other. Okay. So this is a good assignment to approach each other anew. Because what happens in any ongoing relationship is we're building mental maps, and sometimes those maps get infected with a lot of stuff. They can get infected with yesterday's conflict, or they can get infected with an attitude that now you're starting to see your spouse in a certain way, which that really isn't how they are, but that tapped into maybe some transferences in your own head. You may be like seeing them now, like you saw your mom or your dad or somebody else, or out of your own woundedness. So I like it that here's what I like about this. Set it all aside and sit down and say, let's pretend we don't know each other. Okay. And then if you look back in the beginning of your relationship, you, in some ways, either through curiosity or expression or vulnerability or certain activities, there were parts of each other that emerged in that space that you were very attracted to that are no longer emerging. So where's the vulnerability? Where'd it go? Where's the spontaneity? Where's the kind of pushing each other to where there's some sparks happening? Where is the not fitting into a role or an expectation of the other person? I like it. I like the experiment in terms of let's sit down and pretend I don't know you. This is I'm meeting you at a party, or I'm meeting you at a bar, I'm meeting you at a social gathering, or wherever it is. So tell me about you. And get into curiosity. That's the first thing that I would say. Actually, it's about the third thing I've said. But the next one would be I want you to go back and look at what activities did we do in the beginning. One of my favorite verses in the Bible, Jesus is talking to the churches in Revelation. And if you're familiar with all that, what he does is basically he kind of gives them a performance review. He says, I like it that you do this, but I don't like it that you do this or this or this. And to one of them, he says, you've lost your first love, meaning for me. You've gotten so much into the activities that the connection has suffered. Okay. But then he says something really profound. He says, return to what you were doing in the beginning, because it was the activities that you were doing that actually drove the connection. Give an example of this. When you're first married, or when somebody's first married, they don't have kids, usually. And so they're spontaneous and they're going and doing stuff they both enjoy. And life is a playground in that sphere of their relationship. Well, then a lot of times what happens is you start to worry about finances, your career, you have kids. And now you're in the parenting, you're kind of turned into more than roommates, you kind of turned into coworkers in this company called this household, where it's all task oriented relating to keeping things going. I want you to set that aside and ask, what did we used to do that had nothing to do with running a household? Because all that stuff is making us boring. We've lost each other. And then the next thing I would say is this. I was thinking of another one of my favorite verses and passages is the story of Mary and Martha. And Jesus has come over to their house and they're having a party. And Martha's getting everything ready. She's running the house. She's getting the arrangements ready for the party and all that. And Mary's just sitting there hanging out with him, just hanging out. And Martha's frustrated because Mary's not helping. So Martha comes over and says, Lord, she's not helping me at all. There's so much to do. I'm doing all this stuff, and she's not helping. And Jesus turns to her and says, Martha, Martha, you're worried and bothered by so many things. Really, only a few things are necessary. And then in one of the Gospels, he says, really only one. What? Says she was sitting at his feet listening to him. When's the last time you guys just sat at each other's feet, listening, connecting? That carved out time. Who cares about the career for that moment or for that time? So there's a few things, but specifically to your question, how to explore this in a way that satisfies both of us and reignites our passion. Any one of those would be helpful, I think. You put all of them together, and then I think you've probably got some good stuff going on. Now, I want to give you one more. I want to give you one more. I want you to sit down together and do this exercise. Tell each other what it was that you fell in love with. And just talk about that quality and how you experienced that part of the other person in the beginning. And see if that kind of brings that part of them back. And also your memory of really that's who you're dealing with, somebody other than just running a career. And in all of that mix, there may be some good stuff. I would suggest we have a webinar. If you go to the boundaries.me and look at the workshops tab, we have a workshop called the marriage equation, and that might be very helpful to you.